It says, but let's see. Hello? Is it working? Okay. Okay. We have sound. My microphone is a little weird, so I have to like check on another device. And I do test before I go live to make sure that my microphone is working, but YouTube can be weird sometimes. So I wanted to talk today, and I don't know how long this video will be. So if you see it, you see it. If you're here, you're here. And if you're not, you're not. And that is just the end of that fucking discussion, okay? But I wanted to talk today about the old days. Do you fucking remember the old days? Like when your grandmother was practicing, or your, I don't know, your mother. Like the Lady Grave Dancer talks about this all the time. Solitary Luna has talked about this all the time. I think Lunar Wisdom. I don't know if Lunar Wisdom has any family relatives that are witches. I don't think so. At least none that she's talked about. But Lady Grave Dancer, Solitary Luna, they talked about, you know, their grandmothers or their mother's craft, or how they picked up bits and pieces. Like you get tidbits in their videos, right? Like little tiny tidbits. And those tidbits are a glimpse into the past. And that is a magical place to be. I'm sure even Ravenways has talked about this some point somewhere. Who knows? But she's done videos where she's like, back in the 80s and the 90s when I worked in occult shops, this, that, and the other thing, right? Like she's given you a little bit of a glimpse. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the glimpses are where the most magic is, in my opinion. So what I mean by that is that when someone talks about how their grandmother used to practice, or how their mother used to practice, or how their great grandmother used to practice, and how they've picked up bits and pieces here and there, maybe family journals, maybe, I don't know, postcards or whatever, or however your family kept their knowledge. Maybe they just pass it down word of mouth, or maybe it's just things that you've always just known, right? Like you know certain things for certain things to do certain things, right? So when you get that little glimpse into the past of how witchcraft used to be, so to speak, it feels more magical than whatever it is that we're dealing with today, right? That is why I disdain modern day witchcraft so much, because it's too capitalist, I guess, if that makes any sense. It's very, when you think about witchcraft today, what do you think? What are the top things that you think about? Prosperity, wealth, and love. Wealth and prosperity are the same thing, but you get the idea. And yeah, it was the same thing back then. That's what people wanted. They wanted to get jobs, they wanted to find love, they wanted to make their marriages successful, they wanted a happy home. Today it just feels like everybody just wants they want something without putting in the effort that you used to put in to get the things that you wanted, right? So in the old days, you would probably do, I don't know, maybe your grandmother had some simple thing that she would do in the kitchen while making dinner or whatever. But today we make some big elaborate show out of it. Back then, they might have just maybe lit a candle, or they would make child's dolls and they would imbue them with protection herbs and magics, but no one even knew, right? They just think you're just stuffing a doll with nice smelling herbs and you're sewing it together and you're all sitting around in the family room talking and like Dorothy is waiting for her new doll that you're making her and the new dress, right? But all the while, you're working some serious witchcraft, and no one is any of the wiser. And today, it just feels like it's so showy. And it feels like it's just so out there. And it feels like it's just so stretched, like too much butter over the same piece of bread. You've saturated the bread in this butter. Witchcraft today it almost doesn't feel authentic anymore. I don't know. Maybe that's too harsh, because I agree with you. It's definitely more open. And that is probably a good thing, because we need to share knowledge and teach people how things were done and how things are done today, and they can see the evolution of how things evolved over time, how different spiritual practices evolved. I mean, look at Wicca, right? Like, it goes from this ceremonial dancing around naked in some like 90-year-old's backyard to this, well, it can still be ceremonial and dancing around naked, but it's more just simplified. It's easy to get into. It's like a religion now. It's evolved, right? But I guess somewhere along the way, it feels like it just kind of lost its magic a little bit. Like, it just feels normal, if that makes any sense, right? Like, when we think about witchcraft, we think of people who live on the fringes of society. We think of people who are not outcasts, but they see themselves as outcasts. They see themselves as different, or they see themselves as whatever. And witchcraft is a way, like I've said in previous videos, where people can feel like they're getting or attaining their own power, like they're taking back some form of power that's been lost, or the craft is giving them a form of power that they feel like they've never had before. And the craft in, say, like the 1600s was definitely about survival, right? It was about keeping your enemies at bay, keeping bad spirits away, keeping your farm prosperous, keeping your family healthy. It wasn't necessarily about cursing every other person on the internet, because the internet didn't even exist in the 1600s. It wasn't about having all these fancy crystals and all these fancy candles and all this fancy bullshit, because none of that shit existed, right? Will make people mad, but it seems like it's lost some of its authenticity. Not that today's magic isn't real, just that something's been lost by becoming so mainstream. Exactly. It doesn't feel mystical. Even when I want to go down like some of the serious occult paths and like just check out like how deep down this rabbit hole can I go, I won't retain half of it, but it's fun. Let's go down this path. It just feels, because like there's everybody and their mother's dog has talked about demons, and everybody and their mother's dog has talked about left hand path, and everybody and their mother's dog has talked about Solomon, and everybody and their mother's dog has talked about this, that, and the other damn thing. And it just feels not fake, not fraudulent, just too much. Like, it's the same thing said over and over again in a different way, presented in a different media type thing, and by a different person with their own perspective and their own opinions, which is fine and fantastic, especially when you're looking for different viewpoints and opinions on a subject. But it just doesn't feel magical anymore. Oh, whenever like Solitary or Tequila talks about what it was like when they were kids and their parents were doing magic, and the stories, the tidbits, the bits of information you get makes the craft it makes it come alive. It makes it feel like it's a thing that has air still left in its dying, dead, cancer-ridden lungs, right? The craft depend a lot more on intuition teaching you, but now it is very structured by some. And that, maybe that's the reason why the craft doesn't feel as magical anymore, is because it's so fucking rigid. And it's so, you can and you can't, and this is mine and you're not allowed, and pissy fighting on the internet, and just stupid people being stupid. It just feels like the craft today is taught to you in a way where if you do step A followed by step B followed by step C and you say step D properly, then outcome E will happen. And you might think, well, some people need that structure and that rigidness in their lives. That's how they process, that's how they deal with it. But like, doesn't that take away the mystery of the craft when you have it so structured and so rigid? Like, it's not a fucking school lesson. It's, the craft is who you are. And you're like, well, I'm a structured and rigid person, so that means the craft is going to be structured and rigid for me. And that's a fair argument, but what are you missing out when you don't let it be chaotic? Because even the most structured and rigid person with the biggest, thickest stick so far up their ass, occasionally, in a blue moon, lets loose and gets a little crazy. So, like, those are the people you gotta like lock up in psych wards because they just flip on you. But you know, it's, I don't think you can contain the craft into an instruction manual. And I think that's what's happening today with a lot of these books and so on and so forth. It has made the craft easier to get into, but it has made it so much more difficult to go deeper, because people just think that what's in a Scott Cunningham book or what's in a Silver Ravenwolf book or what's in a Buckland's book is the end all and the be all. Like, whoever their favorite author is, anything witchy written by them is the gospel and anything else is garbage. And I'm just like, I don't think that's how we should be looking at the craft. The craft is something that you, well, there's two forms of the craft. There's something that you are just a scholar about, and you dig and you dig and you dig and you dig deeper for different types of magical practices, rituals, gods, goddesses, kind of like what I do, right? Like, I'm just all over the place and like digging into like ceremonial high magic books, and digging into Wicca books, and digging into, I finally got through that Icelandic book. I don't know if I ever uploaded a video on that. I might have. But I bought an Icelandic book, and I don't understand the concept of staves. They sound very similar to sigils, but based off of, again, the instruction manual, because it was written like an instruction manual. But based off of it, it sounds like sigils, but it's not sigils. And I'm just like, it is sigils, but it's different. So I'm a little confused on how staves work. I would love to incorporate some staves into my magic, because the book that I was reading basically spells it out that it's not cultural appropriation. Plus, I don't think white people can steal from other white people when it comes to magical traditions. So, gray area, maybe, or white area. I've never felt concerned with you have the right colored candles or whatever. You are simply allowed to do what you have on hand or work. I've never had a spell not work because I didn't say the right words or use the wrong color candle or the wrong herbs. That's the other thing. Where's this concept of right and wrong come from? It's everywhere. You can't do a money spell like that. You can't do a love spell like that. You can't do a circle like that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You are doing it wrong. So does that mean if we had the ability to time travel that you would go back and tell the witches of old in the 14th century? Well, that was a different time. See, this all comes back circle round, right? Like the craft is the craft is the craft, but somehow we've polluted it. It's like the earth. We have polluted the earth. And I still drive my SUV. I'm one person. I'm sorry, but I'm one person. I have polluted the earth. You have polluted the earth. We have all polluted the earth. Let's put it that way, okay? Me streaming this to you is polluting the earth. You know how much carbon dioxide this shit is putting out right now? Probably a lot. Anywho, greenhouse gases, whatever. So the craft used to be what you have on hand. It used to be what you could scrounge up. And it used to be what you could grow. What did you need? What do you need a yellow candle for? What the hell do you need a green candle for? Why can't you go down to your local farmer's market, pick your ass up some beeswax, and make your own damn candles? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these tools or things that we use in our craft, but it just feels plastic. Hollywood. Like I look at Lady Gravedancer's videos and I'm like, that feels more authentic than this other chick I was watching on TikTok who's showing off her $350 worth of fucking crystals that she bought. What do you need $350 in crystals for? I mean, it makes sense if you bought one giant fucking selenite that you stick up your coach. But last I checked, you bought a whole bunch of tiny little things. $350. Maybe if you're making massive ass crystal grids, which could work. Apparently, crystal witchcraft is a thing. I looked it up on YouTube. It is a thing. It has a thriving community. It is an entire thing. Look it up. Type in, not now, but after. Type in crystal witchcraft. I mean, these people are smoking more dope than I do, but they're happy and positive and lovely people that talk about crystals and the magic that you can do with crystals. And it's not even witchcraft. They're not even really, some of them don't even talk about spells and rituals and demons and possessions and creepy haunted fucking dolls. No, they talk about crystals and positivity and Reiki and healing and vibrations and energy. And I'm just like, holy fuck, you people are giving me a headache, but I love this because it feels more authentic. They're not going out, aside from their $350 on fucking crystals, and buying all the fancy shit. They're just using crystals. And I mean, you use whatever you want to use, but it feels to me more authentic and more like witchcraft when someone just uses what they have in their kitchen. So you've only got a tea light candle on hand and some cayenne pepper. Honey, I can teach you 8 ways to burn bitch. I am posting this here now, but in the future, we do a curse on a bitch, an internet bitch. And I got confirmation from this bitch's TikTok tonight that this curse worked out perfectly fine. And I was like, oh. I teach you how to do this curse. And I show you my little TikTok thingamajiggy. And I got confirmation tonight that it worked. And so now I've got this shit on the altar to do just like a cleansing of the body, the mind, and the soul, right? Because when you do curse work, that shit is heavy. That shit is heavy. You are inviting all kinds. I don't know how you do your curse work. Maybe you just burn some incense and you just visualize the bitch strangling on her own saliva in her bed while her husband is, I don't know, dead on the floor in the living room or something. I don't know how you do things. Some people are imaginative. I am very imaginative. But I sent evil, dark, just hatred at this person. Confirmation it worked. That's all I need to say on that subject. But I mean, if you've only got a tea light candle and you've got some ginger and you've got some cayenne pepper, I will teach you 20 ways to burn a bitch. 20 ways. We may need to go for a walk to get some stones. Speaking of which, I have been looking through a book that I bought a while ago called the 5,000 Spell Book, which everybody and their mother's dog probably has and has seen and gone through. And if you look it up on YouTube, it's like looking up grimoire flip-throughs. By the way, have you ever looked those up, grimoire flip-throughs? If you look up Book of Shadows flip-throughs, you generally get a lot of charmed replica. So if you look up Grimoire, you get more of people's actual Book of Shadows. And then if you click on one, then you get the suggested video section, and it shows you even more, and it's a fucking rabbit hole. Okay? It's a fucking rabbit hole of people's shit. Their feces. But I was looking up all of these different grimoires because I have been moving things over from my current leather-bound grimoire that is overflowing, and I've been moving some things over into a new bound, faux leather-lined kind of book that has many more pages in it. So I've just kind of been moving things over slowly, and I've just been putting in a little bit of, I don't know, new spells and new things that I've been doing. And I haven't really been doing a lot, which that leads me into the other subject, but I want to go back to the 5,000 spell book thing for a second, because I was flipping through this thing and I was like, if you own this book, do you need any other, like, do you even need a Book of Shadows at that point? What do you store in your Book of Shadows? That's what I want to know. I realize there's only like 3 people watching, but the comment section will be made available at some point, and someone will watch 22 minutes in, and then they will comment what they put in their damn Book of Shadows. But what I put in mine is obviously different from what you put in yours, but it's more of a record of like spells, oils, teas and incense, things that helped me at that point that will possibly help me in the future. Have you ever just sat down and flipped through your Book of Shadows? Like, I don't know, just been sitting there and you're just kind of flipping through it, and maybe you're not even looking for a spell, but just kind of reflecting and seeing the different spells and the different rituals, and remembering and like taking a minute on each one of those to like think back and be like, remember when I did this and what did I do it for? And then thinking to yourself, like, would I use this spell again today? Because most of the time when we record stuff in our Book of Shadows, some people use it as a way to record everything about witchcraft, like the Wiccan Read, which I think is bullshit, but you do you. The different moon phases. I mean, Google on your phone, but again, you do you. The different correspondences. Like, do we need correspondences? Like, do you physically need to write down that lavender and X and Y and Z all go together for this? I mean, if that's how you do your craft, you do your craft that way. I don't put spells or recipes in my Book of Shadows. See, that's what I mean. Some people don't put any of that shit in their Book of Shadows. If I haven't done them. Oh, okay. Well, I should have read the rest of the sentence, but you know. Who that's the other thing. Who is putting spells and rituals in their books of shadows and they have never done them? I mean, you do whatever you want to do with your book, it's your craft, right? But I want to know on a curious level who is sitting there being like, oh my God, that could be a really, I've done this once, so I'm guilty. And I'll explain after. But like, who's sitting there being like, oh my God, I've just totally thought of the spell that I'm going to put in my book of shadows. And I'm like, never going to do this spell, like ever. That was me once. I was given a spell by the spirits, a cow heart and love spell. I needed to go buy a cow heart, red ribbon, roses, and white candles. I never bought the cow heart. I never done the spell. I have the spell in my book of shadows. I've never done it. I guess I'm a horrible person. If I make an incense, I want to go back and annotate it, like the spell really worked or the incense needed more clove, etc. Oh my God, that feels, Dolores, your description reminds me of a Charmed episode. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I do. I don't know if you've ever seen Charmed, Miss Dolores or Mr. Dolores. I don't know. I can't really tell by your picture. But if you've ever seen Charmed, there is an episode where a necromancer like comes back during the christening of one of the babies, and the sisters are gathered around the book of shadows, and they open it to the necromancer's page, and they see all these annotations. Oh, he likes this. Oh, he likes that. Oh, I use this vanquishing spell. Oh, this, that, the other thing. That I really like. I've done that a few times where I have gone back to a few of my spells, and I've put things like, oh, use this incense blend next time, or my favorite thing to do is to kind of make my book of shadows look a little like Practical Magic, where they've got that giant fold out section. So in my leather bound one, there's different sections where it's like these pages that just open, and it's an addendum essentially to the spell or the ritual to do it either differently, oh God, given the circumstances, or to make adjustments where needed, right? So like that to me feels magical. Like when you're recording your magic, the spells that you were doing, the rituals, maybe you did a marriage spell to help your children's marriage, I don't know, be successful or something, and you recorded it in your spell or in your book of shadows, and I don't know, 20 years later when their children are getting married and you're going to do the same spell, maybe you adjust it and there's like an alteration that you put, and when your grandchild gets your book of shadows for whatever reason and they go to do this spell, right? Like that feels to me fucking magical. That just, I don't know. Mine is more of a journal of what I've done. They have these giant books filled with stuff they've never done. Right? This is the thing that I've seen flipping through some of these like grimoire books, right? Like flip through things, is that people have these giant books that they're working on. They have to be done so perfectly and so neatly and so organized and so cleanly, and they have certain things they want to put in that they've printed off, or spells that they think will be cool to do one day. And then they burn themselves out because they've turned this process into a job. Like one lady was talking about how she wanted to do like fancy calligraphy and fancy this and fancy that. And she copied out the Wiccan Read and she got done it and she was like, no. And that was like the end of that book. And my thought process is that your book of shadows, it can be anything you want. But at the end of the day, it should be a place where you record something about your craft or yourself or your experiences in the craft, right? Like when I think of a book of shadows, I think of a book of spells and rituals and potions and little notes here and there from the author. And it's not a step-by-step guide. It's written in a way where it's like, at the time of blah, 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 this has helped me greatly to overcome financial difficulty or a lack of love or whatever, right? And it's like a red candle with or dipped in rose oil and burned 3 times on a full moon, right? Like shit like that. It's like that's kind of how I write stuff in my Book of Shadows. Is I don't do it as like a step by step. You need these ingredients to do this, and then you need to do this step. Like that's boring to me. I want to write it in a way where it's a glimpse into the moment in time when I needed the spell. And obviously everybody's gonna do their own damn Book of Shadows however they want, right? Yes, let it be a living book of magic, not a collection of stuff they've copied from other witchy books. And that is what makes magic feel real for me. It doesn't feel Hollywood. It doesn't feel fake or fictitious. It doesn't feel outlandish. It doesn't feel overdone. It's this thing that gives me an inkling of magic when I write my spells and my incantations and my rituals and my research on various demons or other entities that I'm working with in my Book of Shadows. And I write it in such a way where it's like one page after the other. There is no organization. If you were to look through my Book of Shadows, my leather bound one for a love spell, there's probably 6 in there. But they're spaced at different increments. And yeah, I could combine them all into one ritual or spell, but it's just you get to see like what it was that I needed at that point in time, right? Does that make any sense? If today's trendy witches read my book, they'd say it's not real magic. I use things in ways that others say doesn't work. And that's the thing that irritates me. Example, rose petals are used in love spells. I use rotted, nasty rose petals in curses. That is the best way to do it. That really is. I like to take roses. If I'm gonna do a curse, I'm gonna take roses and I'm gonna flip them and put them in the water. And then I'm gonna put that out in the sun so that the water gets putrid and rank and like the flowers are all moldy and gross. Then you pour that into a jar or a witch's ball and you take it to the graveyard and you either bury it. It depends the graveyard you take it to, because if you take it to one that's like super secluded and far away, then you bury it on a grave. And if you take it to like, I don't know, a cemetery in your city, then bury it in the graveyard, right? But that's how, like, those are like, that's magic to me. And today's witches, today's generation of witches, if you will, are so like they find that disgusting. They find that repulsive. They wouldn't want to do any of that. Oh, why would I want to do a curse? I don't want to curse anybody. That sounds nasty. That sounds violent. I just want positivity and light and sunshine and rainbows. And it's like, I'm gonna take that positivity, light, and sunshine and rainbows, and I'm gonna shove it so far up your goddamn ass. Like Christ, people. Like witchcraft is simple craft. That is simple. It takes a week for that water to turn rancid and nasty. It takes, right? And then it takes a couple of minutes or hours for you to do whatever it is that you want with that jar. Maybe or with that water, maybe you pour it over a poppet, bathe a poppet in it, right? And then put all of that into a jar and bury it or place it in a cemetery, right? And maybe that's all you do. Like that's really simple craft. But today it just seems like people just want to like light an incense and a tea light candle, which is fair, and expect an outcome immediately. The other issue that I have is not with modern day witchcraft, but it's with these light witches. I'm talking like witchcraft light. What do I mean by that? I'm talking like it's one thing to be all positive, light, and uplifting and expel the evil, purify the space, protect my soul, my body, and my mind, right? Like that is totally fair because witches are grounded to the earth and we are beings of the earth. We are spiritual entities and we have this earthly power inside of us and we cleanse and we protect ourselves. But it's when they don't know how to defend themselves. I don't believe in curses, so those won't affect me because my magic is purifying and healing and loving and uplifting and all this other bullshit. The thing is that it doesn't matter if you believe in witchcraft or not, a curse will still affect you. It will still affect you. It will still hit you with the same potency and it will still fuck up your life in the way that it was meant to fuck up your life. The fact that you don't believe that a curse doesn't work is not my concern. The only one that needs to believe that the curse will work is me, the caster. I don't need you to believe in my magic. I need me to believe in my magic. And when a witch comes to that realization, they unlock a lot of potential and power within themselves and their magical space and the things that they work with. And when you open yourself up to more than just sunshine, light, rainbows, and positivity, you see that, yes, there is a whole dark and twisty side to the craft with the cursing and the hexing and the throwing shit at each other because it's the fucking internet. And you see all of this darker side of the craft. And like even in modern day witchcraft books, they still describe Hecate as black magic and dark and evil and all of this other stuff. And when they talk about curses, or banishing in Wicca, as they like to call it, when you're banishing, they say to call upon Hecate in some instances, in some of the books that I've been reading. And they treat Hecate like she's the devil in Wicca, at least in like the Scott Cunninghams and the Silver Ravenwolf and the just some of the Wicca books where they talk about like where the first introductory pages are like, Wicca is not about working with the devil and we don't worship the devil, we don't sacrifice, blah blah blah, we follow the Wiccan read, right? And they just the way they describe Hecate is just like she's the devil. She is the equivalent of the devil in Wicca. And I'm just like, this is weird because when you look past the fancy books and the instruction manuals, as I like to call them now, when you look past these things, there's so much more to the craft out there. Hecate is not dark and evil and all of this other crap that these books make it out to be. And, you know, the Morrigan also isn't dark and evil. These are goddesses who are powerful. And it seems to me that when a woman is powerful, she is dark and evil. If someone does a spell against you, you have to know how to counteract it. Counteract against it. And this is true. This is true. I recently had someone fucking throw shit at me and I threw it right back at these bitches, right? We were just talking about that. I threw it right back at them and was like, no. You can have your nonsense. And like I said earlier, I got the confirmation that they have the damn nonsense. Okay? Like, don't fuck with me. I'll fuck you out your skull. I'll fuck you out your skull. Okay. These younger ones expect that if you do a spell, it comes into fruition 10 minutes later, and they're always looking for that quick fix. And I don't understand why. Me and Solitary have discussed this as microwave society, right? Put a pizza pop in the microwave, 3 minutes later it's done. Got your dinner. Don't want to cook too lazy. Don't want to learn too lazy. Don't want to do the steps required to lazy. Maybe that's what it comes down to. But how are you able to be a witch if you don't listen. Like I've said in the last 20 fucking live videos that I've done, where listening is key. How do you be a witch if you can't tap into the earth's energy? Some of these people are like, oh, I've tapped into Mother Gaia. And you're standing around these people and you feel nothing coming off of them. You feel no energy, no nothing. It's just words and motions that they're going through because they found something that they think fits them and makes them in that moment feel, I don't know, better than they were feeling before, but it doesn't fit. But they've shoehorned themselves into that particular thing. And when you stand next to these people and they talk about how connected they are with the earth and the crystals and the Reiki energies and the positivity, you feel nothing come off of them. They're like hollow husks of human beings spouting nonsense and sitting around sipping expensive lattes pretending like, I know everything. I know about the law of attraction. Everybody knows about the law of attraction, you stupid cunt. It's what you put out is what you get back. Okay? It's not that difficult. We don't need to sit here and have a 3-hour long conversation while you fucking fiddle with top knot and drink your fucking expensive latte. Okay? I don't have time for you to talk down to me when you're too busy living in a goddamn microwave society. Right? How are you? I've been working a lot lately, but glad to be able to catch you live tonight, right? Right? Welcome to America. I wonder if Hecate became so important to the craft, or when she became so important to the craft. I know my grandma knew nothing about her, yet her magic worked. This is what I am wondering. Like, why is Hecate? Is it because she's a dark goddess associated with black magic? Maybe that's why, because it's a darker form of witchcraft. They get to work with Hecate and be in that atmosphere that the other witches on YouTube are in, but still have their sunshine, light, rainbows, right? Like you've seen other witches, like Derry Carpenter worked with Hecate back in the day, apparently, or the Morrigan or some shit. And this bitch's like room looked like a candy store. Okay. And I'm just like, if it fucking works. But some people, I think, just, I don't know, maybe in the internet space, some people just want to feel like they fit in, like they belong. Like if I work with Hecate, if I curse with Hecate, right? Like a lot of people curse with Hecate. What? Like why? I mean, is she better than Belial? Is she better than the Morrigan? Is she better than Clonic? Is she better than Astra? Is she better than the spirits? Is she better than your own energy? I just have questions. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I am literally asking questions and no one writes shit in my comments. Why the fuck are people working with Hecate? Tell me your stories. Tell me your reasons. I want to know. Why is she so fucking popular? It used to be a bandwagon. I don't know what the bandwagon is now. What is the bandwagon? What is the other bandwagon that's kind of going around, but not so much, is that Sphinx god. Oh, what is that cat god's name? Now I have to look this up. Give me a second. I'm going to look this shit up. What is, okay, cat god Egyptian. I know that much. What the hell is this cat's name? Bastet. Wait, Bastet. Best. What? How do you say that? Can you speak? Bastet. Okay, wait. Bastet. I don't know if you heard that. I don't know if that was really loud. I'm really sorry if it was, but Bastet or something. Like everyone else is working with this god, and I don't really have a god. I have the Morrigan. She's she's off doing her own thing. So like she comes and she goes and she, you know, she pokes her head in and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, not much. And she's like, okay, peace. But some people have got these like elaborate altars to Hecate or the Morrigan, or, and again, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just asking questions. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm trying to start a conversation. If you don't want to have one, that's your own damn prerogative. But why? When Raven Ways used to talk about the Hecate is when I used to watch her, because that felt more magical than whatever this astronomy thing is that she's got going, and it seems to be working for her, so kudos to you. But the skull candles and the Hecate stories were what I stuck around for. Anywho, she used to kind of show up, not like, I don't think Ravenways has an altar. I think she has spaces where she sets out her skulls. This woman just works with skulls. She just works with skull candles. I've never really seen Ravenway work with anything else. I've never seen her use any other tool. I've never seen her buy expensive herbs or have expensive crystals, or she literally lives in the middle of, I think she lives in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. And she's a prime example of what you use what you have on hand. She always has the materials to make skull candles though. So, and she always has skull candles. She should really sell those skull candles. I would buy all of the skull candles, but right, I don't think she worships Santa Marita. She's definitely more hoodoo, if anything. I don't know what her craft is, but she's definitely more hoodoo-esque than. And from some of her videos, it seems like she works with the beloved dead, as she likes to call them. So I'm thinking she's in the same lane as kind of like Ember Honeyraven, where it's more hoodoo oriented, because she has talked about hoodoo in the past. But I do agree with you, because Santa Marita has that Day of the Dead, I think it is, in Mexico, somewhere. They've got the Day of the Dead celebration. Yes, so everybody, Lady Blind Wolf. Oh, she's been asking other things. I only ask for help from Hecate if I'm doing work for another witch that has her as their patron goddess. I would be terrified to reach out to another witch's god or goddess. When the Lady Gravedancer and I used to have an amicable relationship, we used to do these private Google Hangout blah blahs, and she has or had this dark spiritual figure, and he wears a black hat and a black coat, and he would hang out outside my balcony window on my balcony every time I would talk to her, and he would leave every time we had finished talking. So, like, if I had to do, let's say she came to me and was like, hey, can you do a spell for me? Which she never would, but pretend. I would never want to reach out to this woman's gods or goddesses, because whatever she working with, that shit was scary as fuck. And I've worked with some fucking dark shit. I've worked with Ashroth. I've had Belith's fucking legions. I have had spirits. I have had my house full of heavy energy, but whatever the fuck that was is not something I ever want to fuck with. I mostly work with Santa Marita, but that only concerns certain things. I've never worked with that. I've never brought hoodoo into my craft. Hoodoo is very much one of those things where it's like, this is your craft or it's not. And like in the way that you can't, you shouldn't mix. You shouldn't be eclectic when it comes to hoodoo. I don't know about other practices along the same kind of lines like Santa Marita, but I don't know. I've never practiced it. I've looked it up on YouTube and like watched little Vice documentaries about like magic in Mexico and Romanian witches and stuff like that. And it just feels mysterious and a little scary. A little scary. In my experience, the deities seem to aid, but the actual work comes from you. So believe that the deity does the work for them. Some believe the deity does the work for them. That is actually interesting because the Morrigan did the work for me when she was slicing and dicing my life into a fucking 1,000 pieces. And then Clonic sent out his spirits to do the work for me. I just had to petition them. Now, what do I mean by do the work for me? Obviously, they didn't apply for jobs for me. They didn't try and get me in a more financial stable position without me doing the mundane work. But in terms of the magical work, they did all of that for me. I just had to reach out and petition them and ask them and basically beg Clonic, hands and knees, fucking beg him, help me. You're like the fucking god of the underworld when it comes to money. Okay, love me. And look where I am today. Yes, the Shadow Man. My daughter has seen him. I'm sorry, is your daughter friends with the Lady Grave Dancer? My son works with the Santa Marita. She gives me a motherly vibe. My son is Hispanic also. I'm sorry, Santa Marita. I have to use Google Speak because I'm blind and it doesn't always catch. Well, that's fine. That's fine. I can't even say the last part of Santa properly, so, you know. But if I'm concerning someone else's patron goddess, it's never hexing, cursing, etc. Yeah, even then, I wouldn't want to reach out. Like, whoever the Shadow Man is or whatever, like, again, with the example with the Lady Grave Dancer, I feel like working magic with her is a scary experience because you're used to your gods and your spirits and your entities, and then you go into somebody else's magical space. Maybe they've invited you to do some magical workings with them, and now you're facing off against their entities and their gods and goddesses that you may or may never have worked with, and you're just faced with this immense amount of energy that, to me, is way the fuck too overwhelming, which is why I don't do coven settings, because everybody's energy and ego is too much for my empathy and my empathetic abilities to handle. Like, I'm the type of person that I'll go out with 4 or 5 people for an afternoon, and about halfway through that experience, I'm fucking exhausted. I'm drained mentally, emotionally. I haven't put up my wards to block that kind of shit because I'm lazy, but I don't have the time to deal with that amount of energy. It's too exhaustive and too draining. And there's not enough crystals in the world for me to carry to have the power to deflect that shit. I'm referring to things like protection or cursing. Some just ask the deity to go and do it and expect to do nothing for themselves. Oh. Well, protection you can ask your deity for, right? Like, I have heard of different ways of doing protections where you visualize your wards and your seals and your things that happen when someone gets too close, so on and so forth. But I have all of these spirits in my house all the time that are always around and generally are protecting me against somebody else's bullshit that they're trying to throw at me. Because I also work with demons, their spirits are also usually always around, so my house is always fucking flooded. And usually, unlike tonight where I'm doing a cleansing candle that's burning, the energy gets lighter. And like tonight it's getting lighter, but usually it's pretty, it would feel heavy for any other witch to walk in here. They'd be like, do you ever cleanse the space? And the heaviness that they feel would be all of the spirits and the entities being like, who the fuck are you? Right? That's what I'm talking about. Like walking into another witch's house, feeling their energy and their vibrations and the things that they work with is just, it can be so overwhelming. But then you walk into your own space where you've got your own energies, your own entities, and your own spirits, and it doesn't feel overwhelming because it's yours, if that makes any sense. Personally, I feel like I have angels and demons are opposite sides of the same coin. Doing anything you research concerning working with demons is the same thing with working with an angel. It is to a degree, except I've never seen any ceremonial books talk about torturing angels in the way that they talk about torturing demons, such as using certain rods and banging them against fire, like fire pits or whatever, or burning their sigils or screaming God's prayers at them, right? Like I've never heard anything about that when it comes to angels. When it's working with angels, it's usually calling on them, making the sigils and the seals that you make on the ground are usually ones that you stand in. Like the circles that you make are ones that you would stand in to call the angel. Some cases you call the angel into them because they're like summoning seals or something. I don't know. It's the Enochian side of ceremonial magic is very God heavy. And like I've said, angels are dicks with wings. I used to work with the saints. Trust me, these fuckers don't want to help you. Take it from someone who worked with the saints, okay? They are very against anything that's not them. If you're not worshiping them all the time and praying to them and always giving them thanks, they don't want to help you. And they only want to help you in your most dire of need, in the most dire of hour, and the last hour after you've expunged and done everything you possibly can. Up to the last hour. Saints are dicks. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because we got way off topic and it's like half an hour went by and now we're an hour, and I only meant for this video to be like 45 minutes long, but okay, here we are. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is how your craft changes. Yeah, exactly. So my son stopped giving Santa Marita attention for only 2 days and she flipped the whole altar over. I mean, saints are dicks. if you're not doing what they want, like I worked with the saints and the spirits, and the saints would be like, no, it's us or them. So I basically was like, it's them, and had a falling out with the saints. I still use biblical magic and psalms in my magics, but I don't call on the saints anymore because fuck those little bitches. I had had enough, and I set up my last fucking candle on my altar for cleansing, and Lydia Dora took one look at what was left, and she said, you need to do that again. Who the fuck is Lydia Dora? And why are you letting some other bitch dictate who or why or what you need to do again? That's the other thing. People will do these candle spells, burn them down, run to the internet and be like, I did this because really long story here. Okay, pages and pages that involve incest and rape and legal litigations, and like, this is Facebook for you. Okay, people just spill their life story in these fucking witchy groups, and then they're at the very end, when you get through all of that nonsense and you get to the very end, their question is do I need to do this again? And you look, and 99% of the comments are like, oh my God, I feel so bad for you. You need to totally do that again. And if you actually look at the images, and if they've taken them properly, they actually don't need to do it again. Some people do these cleansing spells and rituals like 6 times when once was enough. That's my thought process. Now, I wanted to talk about how your craft evolves. Sometimes you just need to be patient. Exactly. Do you remember when you started out on your craft and you were casting all the time? It doesn't matter what it was. You were just experimenting with everything. You were burning incense, you were lighting candles, you had crystals, you had this, you had that, you had whatever it is that you had it all. And you were just doing magic all the time. Because you found it new and shiny. Hi. Oh, hello, Leanne Richer plus Freddy Cougar screams come true. How are you? That's a really long name. I'm just gonna call you Leanne. Okay? We'll be friends. Trust. But do you remember those days like when you found witchcraft and you found the books and it was new and it was shiny and it was beautiful and you were casting and you were at the altar and you were doing this and you were doing things and like Marianne just said, you were adding your own twist and your own ways of doing things. But the point is you were always doing something. It didn't matter what it was. You could just be lighting incense and reading tarot cards or fiddling with your crystals or rearranging your 50,000 altars because you saw a Lady Grave Dancer YouTube video and she was showing off her 250 altars and you were like, I need to outdo her, so I will have altars hanging from the ceiling, right? Like, do you remember those days? Wait, there's a Freddy Cougar movie coming out? Really? Yes, the newness of it. Learning and finding myself was so exciting. I found that as I have grown older and gained confidence, I've learned to pick and choose what spell is really needed. Listen, Solitary. I was fucking getting there. Okay, I was getting there. Oh my god, I was getting there. Now, Santa Marita has left me to know that I can do basically positive magic, can only do positive magic, healing, road opening, that type of thing, but not anything else. I better not use her for basically no hexing, cursing, that type of thing, except, of course, if I need justice in a situation. Yeah, but would she let you work with someone else, a different pantheon, a different entity, a demon, a spirit, a Hecate, anything? I bet you she wouldn't. I bet you that bitch would throw a goddamn fit. No, Freddy is coming live on YouTube tomorrow night. Was supposed to be tonight, but it got postponed. Okay. But so going back to that magic thing, so you were always casting, you were always finding something to do, you were inspired by YouTube videos, forum posts, Facebook, Instagram, just inspired. And then as you got older, as Solitary rudely pointed out much too early, you don't do witchcraft very often. You went from being at the altar 20 times a fucking week to being at the altar once every 3 months. And some people in those situations think that their craft is broken. Your craft does change and evolve, and I've shown this over the years on my channel. But you go from being the 20-year-old witch who is slinging mud and cursing bitches and making guys fall in love with her to the 40-year-old witch who is just doing a prosperity spell to get some money to pay some bills, protecting the family home, making sure it's a happy home. And that might be all you do in an entire year, 3 spells. That's the evolution of the craft. It slows down because you get in touch with yourself and you figure out as you get older that you don't always need to be casting for things. You pick and choose your battles, whether they be with other witches or whether they be with mundane things. You'll probably always still do a money spell if you lose your job or looking for a new job or need some extra income. You might even still do love spells. Hell, I'm working one these days. You might even still curse a bitch. I did that recently. But it's less than what it used to be. The oils and the tinctures that used to clutter your shelves are less than what they used to be. Maybe you still have a few from the old days that you tap into every now and then for incense, for remembering the good old days. Reflecting back on the way that you made Cindy Lou Who die in her sleep from a ravenous curse. Or maybe you're just reading tarot cards now, divining the future. Less spell work, less rituals. The point is that it just gets easier to know what you're supposed to do. Look at shows like The Good Witch. It's a fictional TV show. You're like, there's no witchcraft in the show. Exactly. It's not about the spells and the rituals and all this other stuff. She opens a fucking candle store. It's like a little, I don't know, she's got lotions and candles, and I think she sells crystals or something, but I'm pretty sure it's just lotions and candles. And people come to her and they're like, oh, I'm having a really hard time, blah, blah, blah. This is some issue I'm having around town. And she's like, have this candle. Burn it. You'll feel better. Maybe it'll help you see the path you're supposed to take. And then they play a little witchy tune, and then they come back and in the next scene and they're like, oh my God, like I really love the aroma of that candle. I gotta buy 5 more for Stacy and blah, blah, blah. And it really, really helped me see that, hey, I was just being a bitch yesterday. Right? Your magic goes less from flashy and showy and expensive to simple, mundane. Things that you wouldn't consider to be magical, but are magical because they're magical to you. No, in fact, she gave me permission to work with other things when it concerns magic. She doesn't want to be a part of. Oh, well, guess you found one of them that will let you do that. The good witch knows everything is going to work out to do the greatest good, and she soothes everybody until that is evident. Exactly. And like even shows like Salem, where they're a little darker and grittier, the magic in there is simple. It's simple. It's a puppet here, it's a child's doll there, it's a tincture here or there, right? If you look at Charmed, the TV show, the original one, that was also like, it made it feel like it was everyday magic. Like doing the dishes could be magical, or cooking dinner, or lighting a candle, or burning an incense. The simple things, right? Like, and that's how your craft evolves, or at least kind of how mine has evolved as of late. I have noticed a couple of years now that I do less spell work because I don't really need to do a lot of things. There aren't really a lot of things I need to do. Some things I do and I show you, and some things I do and I don't show you. But I'd say that when I started this channel, I was probably casting 10 spells a month. That's a lot. That's a lot. But nowadays, it's like one every couple of months for something that I need. And it's getting less than that because there's not a lot of things that need to be done. Not a lot of things that need to be taken care of. When you take care of the things that you need, there's not much to do after that, except a little bit of maintenance here and there for maybe some protections or seals or whatever you've got going on, right? Like it becomes simple. The Good Witch is a really good example of modern day witchcraft done right. It's got the flair of modernness to it because it's obviously set in modern times, but it's got the sensibility of everyday magic and how little things can play a big impact in how events play out in your life. And it has nothing to do with spells or rituals or casting or conjuring or anything like that. It's just, it's easy. And the other thing is that when you see in these TV shows where they do use spells and ingredients and so on and so forth, they seem to use simple things, whereas we tend to use more complicated things. So we've got all of these resins and flowers and barks and stones and all this other crap that we use, right? And then you look at like a TV show where they're like putting in a pinch of roses and a pinch of lavender and like a stone and like a flower, and that's their spell. And they've thrown that into a cauldron and they threw in their petition and they said some words and like that's it. And we're just like lighting the cauldron on fire, burning 30 candles, calling on every god and goddess, demanding the universe do what we want it to do. And we're making it so complicated. And it's fun if that's fun for you, if that's what you want to do. But I think there comes a time as we get older where we do less of that. We do less of the grand rituals of attracting love or a man. We do less of the dancing naked in the rain. And we do simple things like lighting a candle when our friend comes over and is sad, and we know that that candle will help purify the energy in the room and uplift the person's spirits, and they might not know that, but we light the candle anyways. And it's a simple form of magic. There's no show, no gloss, no plastic, no Hollywood, no fiction, just lighting a candle. But that's kind of really what I wanted to talk about tonight, was just kind of how the craft, how modern day witchcraft doesn't really feel super authentic to me as much as it does to listen to stories about someone's grandmother and how they used chicken feet or something, right? Like Lady Gravedancer stories or solitary stories or just anybody's stories that doesn't have to deal with, I learned Wicca from a book and I'm like a crystal loving, sage burning, spiritual person who believes in love, light, and sunshine rainbows. Like, I don't fucking care. Your shit is so plastic and fake. Feels fake. Doesn't, I don't know, witchcraft today doesn't feel like witchcraft anymore. You listen to Ravenways go on and on in her live videos or whatever, and you feel, or at least when she's talking about things like in the 90s or the 80s, or like when she was coming up and learning witchcraft or exploring various aspects of the occult, it feels more magical because it's her journey and it's her experiences and the way she tells it to you just makes you feel like A, you're there and living through it, and B, like this is what the craft is supposed to be. It's not always casting, it's not always ritualistic work, it's not always big fancy altars. It's just simple, mundane life things. Like sometimes I wonder if I even need an altar. Like what do we use an altar for? Like what is the purpose of an altar? When you have an altar, what do you use it for? I do workings at mine. What do you do at yours? Do you just put shit on it? You put candles and incense and offerings for your gods and goddesses and your spirits and your entities and your whatever else that is that you work with. Some people have dedicated altars, ancestor altars. I mean, like I said, Tequila's got 50,000 altars throughout her house. There are people who probably have altars. She has altars swinging from the roof because she had altars in her old house, in her children's rooms, up on the ceiling part, like literally bolted to the wall at the ceiling where she would put things on, like sachets and whatnot, to protect her kids and all this other stuff. And I mean, that's literally having an altar on the ceiling. I don't know if it was an actual altar, but it was something. And it was like up there. Maybe it was just a shelf or something. But the point is like, how many people have an altar? And what do you use your altar for? And what's the purpose of an altar? In your craft. In mine, it's a place to do magical workings. But it's also the space that I just litter with candles and incense and offerings for the spirit. Some people, like Leanne said, have an altar in their kitchen. Some people have an altar in their bedroom. Some people have an altar in their bathroom. I don't want to know what you do while you're taking a shit, but I don't think you should be praying to gods. Help me get this shit out. I'm so constipated. Right? Like, that's how you're going to have a stroke. Don't push. Don't push. Girl, if it's not coming, it's not coming. Try again later. Right? Take some fucking pills or something to, like, help with your constipation. And go to a doctor if it's impacted. I have a second one in mind dedicated to animals, deceased and living. That makes sense. Like I said, some people have 20 altars, some people have 5 altars, some people have 1 altar, some people have no altars. Some people have traveling altars. Some people have, like, I don't know. I know, I love me too. But the point that I'm trying to get to is, do you ever think there comes a time when we don't need an altar in your craft? Do you think if you're like 40 now and you have an altar, you think you're going to have an altar when you're 80? You think you'll be practicing witchcraft when you're 80? Some people fall out of witchcraft. I have a charm casting table and a tarot reading table. Oh, that's fun. I want a charm table. I want a charmed book of spells. Okay, I got the 5,000 book of spells. I don't think you need a book of shadows if you have that. There are some people that just work right out of that. They're like, this thing has everything. It does. It has everything. But it doesn't teach you what witchcraft is. It's just a book of spells. And you won't do most of them, or half of them, or a quarter of them. You'll probably do 1 or 2 and get bored with witchcraft. I've seen some people on TikTok who have been getting bored of witchcraft. It's not giving them the satisfaction, and it's not magical to them anymore now that they've pulled back the curtain. Bitch, your spell that you didn't give you your results in 10 minutes, and that's why you're bored of witchcraft now. You want nothing to do with it. Some people, I tell you. Anywho, it has been 1 hour and 20 minutes, and it's like 8 o'clock here, and I have things to do. So I love all of your faces. Okay, until next time.